Episode 1. The Voice Behind the Wall. They say every old house has its sounds. Wood that creaks, pipes that groan, wind that whispers through forgotten cracks. But this wasn't the sound of a house. This was someone saying my name. The night I moved into my grandmother's house, the air felt heavier than air should feel. It pressed down on me, thick with the scent of dust and something sweeter. Old perfume, maybe, or lilies long dead. I told myself I was ready for this. New beginnings, fresh grief, same ghosts. The house stood at the edge of the village, alone, surrounded by trees that looked like they were waiting for something. I had inherited it after her funeral, and though every part of me screamed to sell it, I couldn't. Maybe it was guilt. Maybe it was the strange pull of unfinished family stories. The first night, I slept in the room at the end of the hall. The one she used to call the quiet room. She'd always kept it locked when I was a child. Now I understood why. At 2:17 a.m., I woke to a sound. Not footsteps, not wind. A dragging, soft, deliberate, like fingertips brushing across the wallpaper beside my bed. I held my breath. Then came the whisper. Evelyn. It wasn't loud. It was close, as if the wall itself had spoken. My pulse spiked. My throat went dry. I sat up, every instinct screaming to leave, but something colder than fear rooted me there. I turned on the lamp. The light flickered once, twice, then dimmed into a sickly yellow. Evelyn Clarke, it whispered again. This time, I could feel the vibration beneath my palm as the voice slid through the wall. When morning came, the house felt different. Still, watching, I checked every inch of that wall. Nothing but faded wallpaper and dust. But near the baseboard, a corner had peeled away. Something dark was written underneath in pencil or maybe ash. Don't answer her. I didn't know what it meant, or who her was. Later that day, I found my grandmother's diary in a drawer, hidden beneath folded linens. Most of the pages were blank. But on the last one, in her fragile handwriting, she'd written, "The house knows her name again." That night, I tried to ignore the whispers. I told myself it was my mind playing tricks, the weight of grief, the loneliness that clings to empty rooms. I moved to the living room sofa, wrapped in a blanket, watching the fire die. And just when the last flame flickered out, the silence broke. Knuckles on the wall, 3 soft knocks, then her voice. Faint, cracked, like someone speaking through years of dust. "Why didn't you answer me last night?" I turned. The air rippled near the corner of the room, and for a fraction of a second, I saw it, a shape moving beneath the wallpaper, stretching the surface like something breathing behind it. I ran, up the stairs, down the hall, into the quiet room, and when I slammed the door shut, the whisper came again, not from behind me this time, but from inside the room. "Welcome home, Evelyn." Episode 2. Inheritance of Silence. I used to think silence was peaceful, that it meant safety. But in this house, silence feels like something alive, something listening. The morning after the second whisper, I found a faint smell of burnt wood drifting through the hallway. The kitchen was empty, yet the air still trembled as if someone had just left. On the table, next to the cold teacup I hadn't touched, lay a single page from a notebook I didn't own. The paper was brittle, yellowed by time, and across it, written in shaky cursive, were 5 words. I tried to bury her voice. I froze. The handwriting looked eerily familiar, but I couldn't place it. Then I remembered. The old drawer upstairs, the one my grandmother had always locked. Took me half an hour to find the key. It was still tied with a ribbon, taped to the bottom of her sewing box, like she had wanted someone to find it, but only when it was time. Inside the drawer were 7 notebooks, bound in worn brown leather, each one labeled with a year, each one full of half-written sentences. The first entry read, "Evelyn speaks in her sleep again. I don't think she knows whose words she repeats." I stopped reading. My heart pounded so hard it hurt. My grandmother had written about me, but these diaries were dated long before I ever moved here. Some of them before I was even born. I turned the page. Another note, I hear her calling from the wall. The same wall her mother sealed before she disappeared. The words made my throat go dry. My mother had died in a car accident. At least that's what I'd always been told. But as I read, the story changed. There were no car wrecks, no funerals. Just pages torn out, ink smeared by tears, and one recurring line. Don't let her out. That night I couldn't sleep. I sat in the living room with the lights on, holding those diaries like they could protect me. Outside, rain whispered against the windows. Somewhere in the distance, a door creaked open. Then the house sighed, and the whisper returned, low and trembling, like someone trying to remember how to breathe. Evelyn. I stood, my body shaking. Who are you? I whispered back. For a long moment, there was only silence. Then faintly, I'm the reason she locked the door. The air thickened. I turned toward the stairs and saw muddy footprints leading down from the attic. The attic I hadn't opened. The attic my grandmother's diary said to never enter after sunset. I followed the trail halfway up before it stopped. The last footprint pointed straight at the wall. And just before the clock struck 3, the whisper came again, no longer from behind the wall, but from inside my head. Read the last page, Evelyn. She wrote the truth for you. Episode 3. The locked cellar door. There's a kind of silence that hums. It fills your head like a song you can't unhear. That's what the house sounded like after I read the last page. The words were smeared, but I could still make them out. If she finds the cellar, it's over. For days I tried to ignore it. I told myself it was just grief or paranoia or the damp air playing tricks. But the whisper didn't stop. It followed me from the hallway to the kitchen to the space beneath my bed. Sometimes, I could even feel breath against my ear before it spoke. Sometimes it said my name like a memory. That morning I went looking for the cellar. The house had no visible basement door, only uneven flooring in the back hallway. I knocked on the wood. Hollow. I crouched down, tracing the outline of a square panel half hidden under a threadbare rug. The latch was rusted shut. I pulled, twisted, even used a screwdriver, but it wouldn't move, until something moved from the other side. The wood flexed under my hand, as though someone pushed back. I fell backward, heart thundering, staring at the floor that had just breathed. Then I heard it, a slow, dragging sound beneath the boards, like fingernails scraping against stone. That night, the whisper changed. It didn't just say my name anymore. It said, help me. Couldn't sleep. I sat on the floor above that hidden door, a candle flickering beside me, and whispered into the dark. Who are you? No answer, just that scraping again, closer this time. I went to fetch the key ring from my grandmother's drawer. One of them I hoped might fit. But taped to the inside of the box was a note I hadn't seen before. If she knocks 3 times, do not open. At exactly 2:57 a.m., I heard it. 3 knocks. Soft, slow, certain. The candlelight bent with the air as I froze, every instinct screaming to run. But curiosity is a cruel thing. It whispers louder than fear. I leaned close, hand trembling over the floorboards. Who's there? I breathed. A pause. Then, your mother. The candle died. I don't remember blowing it out. I don't remember standing up. I only remember running through the hall, up the stairs, until the house seemed to pulse around me like a living thing. Every door shut by itself as I passed. Every picture frame turned to face the wall. When morning came, I forced myself back to the cellar. The rug was gone. The latch was open. And on the first step descending into darkness lay a small silver cross. Tarnished, bent in half, engraved with 2 words. For Evelyn. I picked it up, and the moment I touched the metal, I heard her voice again, whispering not through walls, not through the floor, but through me. Now you remember where you were buried. Episode 4. Photographs that watch. Some nights, I wake before dawn, unsure whether I've been dreaming or remembering. The house doesn't sleep, it just waits. After I found the cross in the cellar, I locked the hatch and pushed a heavy chair over it. I told myself I wouldn't go back. But even as I said it, I knew I was lying. Because when something calls your name from the dark, curiosity becomes a kind of disease. That morning, the house felt heavier than before. Every breath tasted of dust and secrets. I walked down the corridor toward the parlor, where old portraits of my family lined the walls. The air smelled faintly of lilacs, my grandmother's perfume again. But something was wrong. The first portrait, a family photo from 1952, had changed. My grandmother was still there, stern and unsmiling. But behind her, just at the edge of the frame, was a shape that hadn't been there before. A blur, pale, watching. I stepped closer. The figure had eyes. I stumbled back, heart pounding. My hands shook as I lifted the next frame from the wall. This one showed my mother as a child, sitting on the same staircase that now led to my bedroom. But in the photo, her reflection in the hall mirror wasn't hers. It was mine. I dropped the frame. The glass cracked like a gunshot. Every portrait in that room was different now. Faces half turned toward me, mouths slightly open, as if caught whispering my name just before the picture was taken. Then I noticed something else. In the corner of each photograph, faintly scratched into the frame, were small numbers. 217, 217, 217. The time I had first heard the whisper. I ran upstairs, clutching one of the photos, desperate for an explanation. I tore open the diary again, flipping through pages until I found a familiar date. September 19th, 2:17 a.m. The photographs moved again. She's almost through the glass now. The floor creaked behind me. Slowly, I turned. Every picture I had seen downstairs was now lining the hallway above. Hundreds of faces staring at me, their eyes glinting like wet stones. And then the whisper, "Evelyn, don't look away." I froze. One of the portraits, a black and white image of a little girl in a white dress, was changing. Her smile widened, her hand lifted, and then she waved. I dropped the diary. Every bulb in the hallway burst at once. I ran, but the house shifted, doors led nowhere, the walls closing in like lungs inhaling. In the flashes of dying light, I saw them. Every ancestor I'd never met, their faces pale and stretched, pressed against the glass from the inside, eyes begging for release. When silence returned, I found myself standing before the last photo still hanging. It was new, too new. The date in the corner read this year. And the girl inside wasn't my grandmother, wasn't my mother. It was me, standing in that hallway holding this very photo. And behind me, in the picture, something else smiled, a hand on my shoulder. Episode 5, The Neighbor Who Never Was. By the fifth night, the house had begun to whisper even when I wasn't there. I could hear it when I stepped outside. The faint sigh of wood, the breathing of something old and patient behind its walls, called my name in the wind. "Evelyn, come home." But I didn't want to be alone again. Not after the photographs. So I went looking for a neighbor. The nearest house sat across the field, half hidden behind a line of dead birch trees. I'd never seen smoke from its chimney, never heard a car, but I told myself people must live there. I needed to believe that someone did. I crossed the field just as the sun dipped low, painting everything in gold that felt like rust. When I reached the porch, I hesitated. The door was open. "Hello," my voice cracked. "I'm Evelyn Clarke." From across the road, a man appeared in the doorway. Thin, gray hair, clothes that looked decades out of fashion. His eyes were sharp, too sharp, as if they had been waiting to see me. "I know who you are," he said softly. "You've come back." His words made my skin crawl. "I've just moved in," I said quickly. "My grandmother left me the house." He smiled, and it wasn't kind. "That house wasn't hers to leave. It's yours." I tried to laugh it off, but something about the way he said it, flat, certain, made my throat tighten. "Do we know each other?" He tilted his head, studying me like an old photograph come to life. "You used to play by the fence. You were 5. You'd stand there and talk to the woman in the window. We told your grandmother to keep you away." My blood turned to ice. "That's impossible. I've never been here before." The man's eyes flicked toward the field, toward my house. "Then why does it know your name?" Before I could answer, the wind picked up. The birch trees swayed, whispering together like a crowd holding its breath. He stepped closer, his voice lowering to a rasp. "She's not gone, you know. The one behind the walls. She remembers every word you ever said to her." I stumbled back. "What are you talking about?" He reached into his pocket and handed me a small, cracked Polaroid. The colors had faded to yellow, but the image was clear enough. A little girl with dark hair, standing in front of my house, smiling at the camera. Me. On the back, written in blue ink, were 3 words: "Don't move back." When I looked up, the porch was empty. The man was gone. The door hung open, but inside there was nothing. No furniture, no footprints, no dust disturbed for years. Only a mirror leaning against the far wall. And in that mirror, a reflection that wasn't mine. It was the old man, still smiling. His lips barely moving as the words echoed from everywhere at once. "She's waiting, Evelyn. She always has been." Episode 6. The Sound of Memory. There are sounds that don't belong to the present. They come from somewhere between, a place that breathes just beneath silence, where memory becomes noise. 3 nights after meeting the man who wasn't there, I found the cassette. It was hidden inside my grandmother's piano, wedged beneath the strings, wrapped in black lace like something sacred or forbidden. Dust covered every key, but the note still sang when I pressed it. And beneath that trembling tone, I heard another sound, like a whisper caught in a loop. The tape was labeled in my grandmother's handwriting, "Don't play this." I wish I'd listened. I set my old cassette player on the table, the kind with peeling chrome and yellowed buttons. When I pressed play, the tape hissed like it was inhaling. Then a voice began. Not my grandmother's. Mine. "If you're hearing this, I found it again. I don't remember making this, but I know she'll come if I stop. Don't stop the tape. Please." My stomach turned cold. I didn't remember ever recording myself. The voice sounded older than me, more tired, like I'd lived 100 sleepless years. Then came another sound. Faint knocking, slow, steady. 3 times. The same rhythm I'd heard beneath the floor. The voice on the tape trembled. "She's in the walls now. Every time I play this, she listens. I think she remembers my voice. I think she wants to wear it." Static filled the room, growing louder until it became a roar. Through the noise, another whisper emerged. A woman's voice, broken and distant. "Stop recording me, Evelyn." I slammed stop. The tape wheezed to silence. The air in the house thickened, pressing against my skin like humidity made of breath. Then the phone rang. The sound startled me. It hadn't worked since I'd moved in. Dust covered the receiver, the cord stiff with age. I lifted it slowly, expecting the line to be dead. But the voice on the other end spoke before I could. "Why did you stop playing it?" It was my own voice. The line went dead. The cassette player clicked by itself. Play. Static again. Louder this time. And then footsteps. Heavy. Coming closer. I turned toward the hallway, heart hammering, every nerve screaming to run. The sound was no longer coming from the speaker. It was moving through the house. 1 step, then another. Slow. Measured. Familiar. I reached for the tape, ready to tear it out, when I saw something inside the reflection of the glass window. A figure standing in the doorway behind me. She looked like me. Same face, same clothes, same trembling hands. But her eyes were wrong. They moved too slow. And as the tape clicked to its end, her mouth began to move in perfect time with the final line on the recording. My voice sang words I hadn't spoken. "If you're hearing this, I'm already inside." Episode 7. The Smell of Lilies at Midnight. I stopped praying the day I moved into the house. Not because I stopped believing, but because I wasn't sure what might be listening. But that night, I prayed. After the voice on the tape, the other me, I tore the ribbon of magnetic film to shreds and buried it behind the house. Still, I could hear the faint hiss of the recording whenever the wind blew. Like the sound had soaked into the soil. Couldn't sleep. Every creak of the walls felt like a sigh. Every flicker of the candle seemed to shiver in warning. And then the smell came. Lilies. Soft. sweet, the scent of funerals. It drifted down the hallway like invisible smoke, pulling me toward the parlor. When I reached it, the air felt thick with warmth, unnatural, heavy, alive. The old crucifix on the wall was glowing faintly, a thin line of light bleeding from its center, and beneath it sat my grandmother's Bible, open. The pages were blank. I whispered a prayer I hadn't spoken since I was a child. Deliver us from evil. My voice cracked halfway through, but the moment the words left my mouth, the air shifted. The smell grew stronger, almost choking, and then, from behind me, keep praying. I spun around. No one there, just that smell of lilies thickening, almost burning now. I looked back at the Bible. Words were forming on the blank page, like ink blooming from underneath. A single verse, handwritten in trembling script. Not every prayer goes upward. My knees went weak. I grabbed the Bible, but the paper was wet, warm to the touch, like skin. I dropped it, stumbling back, and it fell open to another page, where something else had been written. This time in my grandmother's handwriting. She hears your prayers first. The crucifix on the wall tilted. Slowly. Then it fell. And from the hallway, a faint humming, like someone singing a lullaby through a wall of water. It was the same melody my grandmother used to hum before bed. I followed it, step by step, until I reached the door to her old bedroom. It was slightly open. The scent of lilies poured out like fog. Grandma! My voice sounded like someone else's. The humming stopped. Inside, the bed was neatly made. On the pillow lay a bouquet of white lilies, fresh, dewy, as if placed there moments ago. I touched one petal and it bled, a drop of crimson spreading across my fingertip. Then I heard her whisper, faint but unmistakable, from beneath the bed. Don't pray in this house, Evelyn. You'll wake her. My breath caught. I crouched, trembling, lifting the edge of the blanket. Underneath only darkness, and then eyes, dozens of them, white, unblinking, staring up at me. The smell of lilies turned rancid, like rot hiding behind sweetness. I stumbled back, slamming the door shut. The humming began again, this time behind every wall, every floorboard. The house was singing, and through it all, one voice rose above the rest, soft, almost loving, but wrong in every way a human voice could be wrong. Keep praying, Evelyn. I've been listening for a very long time. Episode 8. The Mirror's Second Reflection. They say mirrors never lie. But whoever said that has never seen their reflection blink after they turned away. The morning after the lilies, I woke to find every mirror in the house uncovered. I had draped them in sheets weeks ago, the way my grandmother used to, saying mirrors were windows that look both ways. But now they were bare, every one of them, and they were clean, perfectly clean. I don't remember the last time I touched them. The largest mirror stood at the end of the upstairs hallway. I'd always avoided it. It was old silver-backed, framed with carved angels whose faces had long since worn away. My grandmother had once whispered that the mirror was the oldest thing in the house. That morning it was waiting for me. At first, everything looked normal. My reflection stared back, pale and hollow-eyed, hair tangled from another sleepless night. But then it hesitated. Just a flicker, a delay. I raised my hand. It followed. I tilted my head, copied. But when I stepped closer, it smiled. I hadn't. The air turned cold enough for my breath to fog the glass. I touched it, felt warm, like someone's skin pressed back against mine. Then the faintest whisper, "Welcome back." I stumbled backward, nearly falling. The mirror rippled, like a surface of water catching its breath. That's when I saw something behind me. In the reflection, the hallway was longer than it should have been. Endless, dark, and at the far end stood a figure. Still, patient, with hands clasped in front like a mourner at a funeral. I turned around. The hallway was empty, but in the mirror, she was walking toward me. One step, then another. Her face came into view, the same as mine, but wrong. Her eyes darker, lips cracked, almost sewn together by scars. "Who are you?" I whispered, The reflection smiled wider. You prayed to me. Every light in the house flickered. My skin prickled as static filled the air. The whisper came from behind the glass now, so close I could feel the vibration. I've been on this side too long. The glass bulged outward, as if something inside were pressing to get through. I screamed and struck the mirror with my hand. It didn't break, it breathed. Then her hand reached out. For a heartbeat, her fingers were inside my world. Pale, trembling, dripping something that looked too dark to be blood. I ran. Down the stairs, through the hallway, every reflection in the house lighting up as I passed. Faces in every one of them, versions of me whispering in unison. Let her in. When I reached the front door, the knob was ice cold. I yanked it open and froze. The world outside wasn't right. The trees were gone. The sky a dull, mirror-like silver. Behind me, the voice said softly, "There's only one side now, Evelyn." I turned back toward the hallway. The mirrors had vanished, every one of them, except the largest. It stood where the front door had been, and in it, she stood on my side of the glass, smiling, breathing, and I realized, with a hollow terror that froze my heart, I was the one still trapped inside. Episode 9. When the house sleeps. There's a moment each night, too late to call night, too early to call morning, when the house stops moving. No creaks, no whispers, no breath, just a silence so deep it feels like being buried alive. I used to think silence meant peace. Now I know better. After the mirror, after her, I began to notice a pattern. Every night, the whispers would start around midnight, swell like a storm through the walls, and then, exactly at 3:07 a.m., everything stopped. Not faded. Stopped. The first night I noticed, I thought it was relief. The air went still, the floor stopped moaning. Even the clock in the hallway froze mid-tick. But then came something worse than sound, the absence of it. I could hear my own heartbeat pounding against the walls, and under it, faintly, something breathing that wasn't me. So I stayed awake, watching, waiting. 3:07, the house went still again. I sat on the floor, wrapped in a blanket, listening. For a moment, there was nothing. And then, a click, the sound of a lock turning. I turned toward the hallway. The door to the cellar had opened itself. The chair I'd wedged against it was lying on its side, dragged several feet away. Every instinct screamed at me to run, to leave the house, to let the dead keep their secrets. But fear and curiosity are siblings. They feed each other until you can't tell them apart. I took the candle from the mantel and crept down the stairs. The flame flickered wildly, throwing shadows that stretched like hands across the walls. Halfway down, I heard it. A heartbeat, slow, steady, echoing through the wood. I whispered, "Who's there?" And the heartbeat answered, not in sound, but in rhythm, one beat for each of mine, as if the house itself was sinking to me. I reached the cellar floor. The air was wet and heavy, smelling of iron and earth. My candlelight caught on something carved into the wall, marks like tally lines. Hundreds of them, some shallow, some deep, and next to them, words scratched in uneven strokes. "Don't wake her." Then came the noise. A long, shuddering inhale from somewhere in the dark corner of the cellar. The candle sputtered. Something moved. It wasn't footsteps. It was the sound of fabric dragging across stone, slow and deliberate. I raised the candle trying to see, and for a split second I did. A face, half hidden in shadow, skin gray as dust, eyes open but not blinking. She whispered my name, but her mouth didn't move. The voice came from the house itself, echoing through the beams, the floor, the walls. "Evelyn." The flame died. I ran. Up the stairs, through the hallway, into my room. I locked the door and pressed my ear to the floor, listening. Silence. Then the faintest sound would expanding, settling, like a sigh, and the clock downstairs ticked again. 3:08 a.m. The house had woken up. But I realized something terrible as I lay there, shaking. It hadn't been asleep before. It had been dreaming. Episode 10. the family that never left. I used to think ghosts were memories, but memories fade. The things in this house don't. After that night, the heartbeat in the cellar, the voice that wore my name, I decided to leave. I packed what I could, trembling, desperate for daylight. But when I opened the front door, the world outside wasn't there. Fog. Endless, suffocating fog, thick as milk. I could see the porch, the first step, and then nothing. A void of pale white that hummed softly, like breath behind glass. I stepped forward, and the house breathed in. The fog pulled tighter, swirling like a whirlpool. My vision blurred, and for a heartbeat, I thought I saw faces forming inside it. Pale, reaching, open-mouthed, as if trying to warn me. Then the whisper, "Stay. You're part of the house now." I slammed the door. That's when I noticed the wallpaper. It was peeling in long strips down the hallway, curling like skin left too long in the sun. Beneath it, I saw faint lines, dark, uneven, carved deep into the plaster. First, I thought they were cracks. But when I looked closer, I saw letters. Names. Dozens of them, written in different hands. Some neat, some desperate. And every few feet, the same message repeated beneath them. "We're still here." I ran my fingers across one name, Margaret Clarke, my grandmother. Below it, another Rebecca Clarke, my mother. And below that, Evelyn Clarke. My breath caught. The letters were fresh, the dust still falling. That's when I heard movement behind the wall. A slow shuffle like bare feet dragging over wood. I pressed my ear against the plaster. From the other side, a faint voice whispered, "Don't cover us again." The floor groaned. The lights dimmed. And one by one, the names began to glow faintly, as if lit from within. Then new lines began carving themselves right before my eyes. I stepped back, watching as invisible hands scraped through the plaster, forming shapes, words, names I didn't know, but the house did. One stood out. Daniel Clarke, 1913. I didn't recognize it. But when I said it aloud, something stirred. A deep rumble through the floor, like laughter buried under the foundation. I stumbled backward, tripping over a fallen strip of wallpaper. As I did, a small door revealed itself behind the torn paper. A door no taller than a child, painted shut, almost invisible. My heart hammered. I knew better by now, but knowing never stopped me. I picked up a knife from the mantel and began cutting the seal. The paint cracked like brittle bone. From behind the door came a low, rhythmic sound. Breathing. Then a whisper. "Evelyn, we've been waiting for you to remember." The door swung open on its own. Inside, a small space, a crawlway. Dust, bones, and the faint glow of dozens of handprints pressed into the wood. Each one smaller than the last. Each one warm to the touch. I wanted to scream, but no sound came out. The whisper grew louder, echoing through the crawl space, overlapping voices of every name carved on the wall. "You never left, Evelyn. You just forgot which side you were on." Then silence. When I looked down, my hands were covered in dust, not gray. And beneath it, faintly carved into my own skin, the same words as on the wall. "We're still here." Episode 11, Letters from Herself. Grief has a sound. It isn't crying. It's the silence that follows it. That's what the house feels like now. A silence that knows it's not empty. After the night of the walls, I stopped touching anything that had my name on it. It didn't matter. The house knew how to write for me. It began the next morning. When I opened the front door, still pretending the fog outside was just weather, I found an envelope on the porch. The paper was damp with dew, the edges curled. No return address. Only my name written in my own handwriting. Evelyn Clarke. I didn't open it. Couldn't. I left it on the table, telling myself it was some cruel trick of memory. But the next day there was another one. And the next. And the next. Each letter looked older than the last. Yellowed, cracked, as if it had waited decades to be found. By the fifth day I broke. My hands trembled as I tore it open. Inside was a single page, written in ink that looked almost red in the light. The words were simple, "Don't go into the attic tonight." That was all. No signature, no explanation. But something about it made my stomach twist, because I had planned to go into the attic. I dreamed about it the night before. A door creaking open, a child's lullaby fading in reverse. And when I looked up at the ceiling above me, I swear I heard footsteps. The next morning, there was another letter. This one was dated 2 days ahead. I opened it with shaking fingers. "You didn't listen. You went anyway. Don't make it worse. Burn the house before she remembers your name again." My pulse stopped, because at the bottom of the page was a fingerprint. Mine. I compared it. Same loops, same smudge of a burned scar from years ago. I wanted to scream, but the house seemed to swallow the sound. Instead, I grabbed the box where I'd kept the other letters and froze. It wasn't there. The letters were gone. Only one remained, resting on the table, fresh as if it had just been written. Postmarked, "Tomorrow." I tore it open. Inside was a photograph, blurry, grainy, taken from the top of the staircase. In the picture, I was standing at the bottom, looking up, holding a letter. The very letter I was holding now. Behind me, in the photograph, a shadow stood in the corner of the ceiling. Long hair, pale arms, no face. I dropped it and backed away until my shoulder hit the wall. The wallpaper pulsed faintly beneath my palm, like something breathing inside it. Then softly, the floor creaked above me. Footsteps, slow, measured, crossing the attic. A whisper followed, the same voice that had haunted me since the cellar. "Don't burn the house, Evelyn. You'll burn yourself." The lights flickered. My reflection in the window stared back, but she was holding another letter. And on her envelope, written in that same trembling hand, I read the words, "This is the last one." I blinked, and she smiled. Outside, the fog began to thin, and in the distance, faint as breath, I heard the sound of someone striking a match. Episode 12. The Night of the Red Moon. There are nights when the world feels too still, when time forgets to move, and every sound becomes a warning. The night the moon turned red was one of those nights. It began with the letters, all 12 of them, laid neatly on my doorstep as if arranged by unseen hands. Some were new, crisp and white. Others were worn thin like old skin. But all bore the same handwriting, mine, and the same closing line. "When the moon bleeds, you will remember." I wanted to throw them into the fire, to let them burn with all the other lies this house had told me. But something in me whispered, "Not yet." And when I stepped outside, I understood why. The sky was wrong. The fog that had trapped me for weeks had vanished, leaving behind a hollow stillness. The moon hung low and swollen, the color of fresh blood. It bathed the fields, the walls, and even my skin in a crimson glow that looked alive. Then the house began to hum, low at first, like the vibration of a string plucked deep within its foundation. The windows trembled, the walls exhaled. Every nail, every beam seemed to remember a sound I couldn't hear yet. And then the whispers began, from the floorboards, from the ceiling, from inside the walls. Not one voice but hundreds, all speaking my name, Evelyn, over and over, each voice slightly different, like echoes from 1,000 throats that used to breathe here. I covered my ears, but they were inside me now, fluttering beneath my ribs like trapped birds. My vision blurred, my pulse thundered. The front door swung open on its own. Outside, the sky pulsed red, and at the edge of the yard, I saw her. The woman from the mirror. She was standing barefoot in the grass, her dress the same shade as the moonlight, her face pale and gleaming like polished bone. And when she smiled, I felt the ground shift under my feet. "You called me," she said. Her voice was mine, softer but older, wiser, more certain of what she was. "I didn't," I whispered. She tilted her head, the way my reflection had done days before. "You always do. Every time you say your name out loud, you wake another part of me." I backed away, but she moved closer, her feet never touching the ground. Behind her, the house was changing. The windows widened like eyes opening, the roof groaning like lungs drawing in a final breath. "Who are you?" I demanded. She smiled, stepping into the doorway. The red moonlight spilled over her face, and for the first time I saw what I hadn't wanted to see. My grandmother's eyes staring back at me. "I'm the part of her you inherited," she whispered. "The one she couldn't bury." The air split with a sound like tearing paper. The walls of the house rippled. Blood dripped from the ceiling beams like sweat, and from the hallway behind me came another whisper. My own voice, trembling, terrified. "Don't listen to her. She's not what she seems." Two voices now, both mine, both certain. One pleading, one calling. The woman in the doorway reached out a hand slick with red light. "Choose, Evelyn. The house only keeps one of us." The moon pulsed once more, like a dying heart, and for the first time I understood. It wasn't the house that was alive. It was me, and the house was waiting to see which one of us would survive the night. Episode 13, The Man in the Attic Window. There's a window in the attic that never faces the same direction twice. Every morning it looks toward a different piece of sky. Sometimes gray, sometimes pale blue, sometimes nothing at all. But tonight, I saw someone standing in it. After the night of the red moon, the world seemed quieter. Too quiet, like the calm after something enormous has exhaled. The air outside smelled faintly of copper. Inside, every clock in the house had stopped at 3:07 a.m., as if the night itself refused to end. I tried not to look at the attic. I told myself it was just another trick of the house, another ghost wearing a familiar face. But then I saw it, a figure, tall and still, silhouetted against the flickering light behind the attic window. He was facing out, watching the field, watching me. I should have run, but my feet carried me forward, step by step, up the staircase that groaned like an animal in pain. The higher I climbed, the colder the air became, until my breath fogged and drifted behind me like smoke. Halfway up, I saw something carved into the banister. One word, gouged deep into the wood with shaking hands. "Father." My chest tightened. I never knew him. My mother told me he died before I was born. She never spoke his name, not once. But as I reached the top of the stairs, I realized I didn't need her to, because I'd heard it before, whispered through the walls. The attic door was open a crack, breathing warm air into the cold. I pushed it open. Dust swirled like ash in a shaft of moonlight. The room smelled of old books, rust, and rain. First, I thought it was empty. Then my eyes adjusted. A man sat in a wooden chair by the window, back straight, hands resting neatly on his knees. He didn't move when I entered. He didn't even blink. His face was pale, drawn tight over sharp bones, and though I'd never seen him before, something deep inside me recognized him instantly. "Dad!" The word left my mouth before I could stop it. He turned his head, slowly, like a puppet dragged by unseen strings. His eyes were gray, clouded, but there was something behind them, something alive. "You shouldn't have said it," he murmured. His voice was dry, as though it hadn't been used in years. "Said what?" "My name." I froze. "What is your name?" He smiled. It was wrong. Too wide. "The same as yours." The window behind him flickered again. For a split second, I saw another reflection in the glass. Not mine, not his, but hers. The woman from the mirror, her face pressed against the other side of the glass, mouthing words I couldn't hear. "She wants in," he whispered. "She's always wanted in. That's why I stayed. To keep her out." The floor trembled. The window began to pulse like a heartbeat. He looked at me, eyes burning now, desperate. "When she calls again, don't answer. No matter what voice she uses. No matter how much it sounds like me." The window cracked. A thin line of light split across it. I stumbled backward, the wind howling through the break, and in that moment, I saw it clearly. The reflection in the glass wasn't showing this room. It was showing my bedroom. And in that reflection, someone was already standing inside it. Not the woman, not the man, me. The glass shattered. When I opened my eyes, the chair was empty. The attic window was whole again. and carved into the wood beneath it, still warm to the touch, were 3 words in fresh, wet blood. He never left. Episode 14. Blood in the wallpaper. Blood has a smell. Metallic. Sweet. Like something ancient pretending to be alive. That's what filled the hallway when I woke up. The attic door was shut now, nailed from the inside. The chair where the man, my father, had sat was gone, leaving only deep grooves in the wooden floor, as if something had been dragged across it for years. I followed the scent down the staircase. It grew stronger with every step. Not the sharp tang of fresh blood. This was older, darker, like something that had seeped through time itself. When I reached the bottom, I saw it. The wallpaper. It was bleeding. Thin veins of crimson threaded through the cracks, spreading in jagged lines that moved, as though something beneath the surface was alive and restless. I pressed my palm to it, warm, beating, and beneath the surface, I could feel faint thuds, like heartbeats, slow and uneven, coming from the walls themselves. I whispered, "What are you?" The answer came as a whisper from the floorboards. "Us." I stumbled back, my breath catching in my throat. The pattern on the wallpaper began to change. Floral shapes twisting into faces. Eyes opening within petals. Mouths stretching from vines. Then, faintly, from behind the wall, "Help me." The voice was small, young, a child. My pulse quickened. I tore at the wallpaper with my nails, ripping it in long, uneven strips. Beneath it, I found what I'd feared. Fingerprints, hundreds of them, pressed into the plaster. Some small, some adult-sized, layered on top of one another like generations trapped in silence. And beneath the prints, something glimmered faintly in the light. Thin streaks of red, still wet. The smell grew thicker, the air almost solid. My hands were shaking when I found the shape of a door carved into the wall. Tiny, rectangular, sealed shut by paint and age. The same kind of door I'd seen behind the wallpaper before. I dug my fingers into the crack and pulled. The plaster broke apart, revealing a hollow space behind the wall. Inside it, bones. Small ones, fragile, a child's hand, and clutched within its curled fingers, a torn piece of paper. I took it out carefully, my own hands slick with dust and something darker. The writing was faded, but I could still make it out. "If you hear the crying, it's not her. Don't open the wall again." Then the house side, a low, aching sound that made the floorboards bend. The wallpaper began to bubble, the blood beneath it pulsing faster, as if angered by the air touching it. I turned to run, but the hall was already closing in. The walls tightened, pushing toward me like a throat swallowing its breath. The floral patterns turned redder, wetter, faces shifting, eyes following me wherever I moved. The voice of the child returned, right beside my ear now. She said she would let me out. I spun. No one. Only a small, wet handprint appeared on my cheek, burning cold against my skin. And then, from somewhere deeper in the house, beneath the floor, beneath everything, I heard the faint, rhythmic tapping I'd once mistaken for pipes. Tap, 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 as if someone was still knocking, still asking to be let out. I looked down, and there, spreading through the floorboards, a thin red line crept toward me like a living vein. It stopped at my foot, and from below, a whisper. "Now it's your turn in the walls." Episode 15. Confession of the house. Some houses don't echo, they confess. Every creak, every sigh, every gust through the cracks. It's not the wind. It's guilt trying to leave. After peeling the wallpaper, I didn't sleep. The smell of blood lingered in my hair, in my clothes, in my dreams. I couldn't stop hearing the child's whisper. "Now it's your turn in the walls." So I searched for proof that I wasn't losing my mind. I found it in a box hidden beneath the floorboards of my grandmother's bedroom. Inside, 7 cassette tapes, neatly labeled with years that spanned almost 2 decades. The first one read, "Confession 1, for the house." The others followed in sequence. I hesitated, remembering the last tape I'd played, the one that had spoken back to me, but curiosity is cruel and I've always been obedient to it. I played the first tape. Static, Then, my grandmother's voice, fragile, trembling, a whisper made of dust. "Forgive me. I didn't mean to build it this way. I only wanted to keep her quiet." I froze. She wouldn't stop crying after the fire. I thought if I gave her walls to hide in, she would sleep. But walls remember. They never stop listening. The tape hissed, then went silent for a long moment. When she spoke again, her voice was smaller. "She called to me last night, said she was lonely, said she missed her sister." I stopped the tape. My skin crawled. "I don't have a sister." The second tape began with the sound of rain. Then the voice again, weaker. I tried to bury her name. I sealed the doors, painted the walls, filled the gaps with plaster and prayer. But every night the house prays back now. In her voice, a faint knocking followed. 3 times. I pressed stop. But the knocking didn't stop. It was coming from inside the room. 3 soft taps on the wall beside me. Then another from the ceiling. And another from the floor. I grabbed the next tape. My hands were shaking so badly I dropped it twice before I got it in. Her voice came through again, barely audible beneath static. "She's learning to talk through the wood now. I can feel her in my hands. Every splinter whispers something different." Something cracked above me. I looked up. The ceiling was bleeding again. The tape continued. "If anyone hears this, Evelyn, if you hear this, the house is you now. Took her first. Then it took me. It'll take whoever listens." I yanked the tape out. The player whined, refusing to stop. From inside it, a second voice began speaking, overlapping hers. Not my grandmother's. Mine. "Why did you open the wall, Evelyn?" it said. "You woke her. You made her remember her name." The power cut out. The room went black. But the tapes kept playing though the player wasn't running. Dozens of voices now, all layered together, whispering through the dark. "We are the house. We are the memory. We are the ones you tried to forget." The air grew heavy, pressing against my chest until I could barely breathe. And then, through the chaos, one voice rose above the rest. Clear, calm, familiar. My father's. "Evelyn, confession means nothing if the house is still listening." Something moved behind me, slow, breathing, waiting. I turned, and the wall behind the cassette player was gone. In its place, a doorway, open, black, and from the darkness inside, my grandmother's voice whispered one last time, trembling with sorrow. "Come finish the prayer, my love. You were born from this house." Episode 16, The Child Under the Floor. There's a smell to old wood when it's broken open, like damp paper and something that's been waiting too long to be found. That's what hit me when I stepped through the doorway behind the wall. It wasn't a room. It was a crawl space, a narrow tunnel of rotting beams and dust thick enough to choke on. The walls pulsed faintly, breathing in rhythm with the faint creaks of the house above. I shouldn't have gone in. Every part of me knew that. But the voice, my grandmother's voice, had sounded so small, so pleading, that I couldn't leave her there alone. The light from my candle flickered weakly, painting everything in trembling gold. I crawled forward on hands and knees. That's when I saw it. Small carvings on the beams. Names. Hundreds of them. I ran my fingers along one. Margaret Clarke. My grandmother. Another. Rebecca Clarke. My mother. And then Evelyn. But the wood beneath my name was fresh. Still damp. I froze. Something moved deeper in the tunnel. A faint shuffling, followed by a sound I couldn't mistake. A giggle. A child's. "Hello!" My voice cracked in the dark. "Who's there?" Silence. Then softly, "You took my place." The candlelight trembled as a small figure appeared ahead. She was crouched in the corner, facing the wall. Her hair was long, tangled, her white dress stained brown with age. I whispered, "Who are you?" She turned her head, and I saw my face. Not as I am now, but younger, 6, maybe 7. The same eyes, the same scar on the chin. "I used to live here," she said. Her voice was thin, like paper tearing. "Before you forgot me." I shook my head. "That's not possible." But she only smiled, showing teeth too small, too many. You were the one who asked her to build the house. The candle flickered. The walls shivered with each of her words. She said she'd make you a room of your own, somewhere safe, somewhere no one could ever hurt you again. But you never came back, Evelyn. You left me here. My hands went numb. The candle dropped, sputtering against the floor. In the flash before darkness, I saw something else. Tiny bones scattered around the child's feet, like a broken nest. Then I felt it. Small fingers wrapping around my wrist. Cold. Unyielding. Don't leave me again, she whispered. I tried to pull back, but the floor beneath us began to move. Wood groaning, breaking apart. A black void yawned open beneath the child, swallowing the light. Her eyes glowed faintly as she smiled wider. She's waking up. The tunnel collapsed. I scrambled backward, coughing through the dust, reaching for the doorway I'd entered through. But it was gone. Only darkness. Then, from beneath me, a heartbeat. Slow, deep, terrible. The boards cracked open again, and I saw what lay beneath. A massive shape, shifting under layers of earth. It wasn't a corpse. It was a body made of walls, doors, and beams, the house itself. And from within it, a voice that wasn't human anymore. Every family needs a foundation, Evelyn. You were mine. The floor splintered. A scream my own, echoed through the walls, answered by 100 others buried below. Then everything went silent. When I opened my eyes, I was back in the parlor. Morning light spilled across the floor. The door behind the wall was gone, as if it had never existed. But when I looked down, my hands were covered in dirt, and in the prints of my palms, something pulsed faintly. Heartbeats. Episode 17. The Church That Forgot Her. I left the house at dawn. For the first time in weeks, the door didn't fight me. It opened easily, almost as if it wanted me gone. The air outside was heavy with fog, but the world was visible again. The birch trees stood pale and skeletal, and the sky carried the dull, bruised light of an autumn morning. I walked toward the village, every step feeling borrowed. I needed proof that I existed. The church sat at the heart of the town, a tall, aging thing of stone and silence. Its bell tower leaned slightly, like it had grown tired of listening to prayers that went unanswered. Inside, the air smelled of candle wax and dust. The priest, a thin man with kind eyes and the posture of someone used to burying secrets, looked up from his desk when I entered. "Can I help you, miss?" I swallowed. "I'm looking for records. Baptisms, births. My family lived here. The Clarks." He frowned, thinking. "Clarke." He turned to the shelf behind him and began pulling down ledgers bound in cracked leather. "We have parish records going back to the 1800s. Shouldn't be hard to find." The sound of old pages filled the silence. My pulse followed it, steady, expectant. Then it stopped. He hesitated, squinting down at one of the books. "You said Evelyn Clarke?" "Yes." He closed the ledger slowly. Too slowly. "There's no record of that name," he said. My stomach tightened. "Maybe it's in a different volume. Try my mother, Rebecca Clarke." He checked again, then shook his head. "No Rebecca. No Margaret. No Clarks at all." "That's not possible," I whispered. "We lived here. My grandmother's buried in the cemetery behind the church." He hesitated again, then stood. "Come with me." We walked out the back door, past the crooked gravestones and the brittle grass that bent in the wind. Rows of names stretched in every direction. Generations of the same families, until we reached the far corner of the yard. The priest stopped. "This is where you said she was buried?" I nodded. He pointed to the ground. There was nothing there. No stone. No name. Only a square of untouched earth. The world tilted. "There was a grave here. I've seen it." His expression softened into something like fear. "Miss, no one's been buried in this corner since before the fire." "What fire?" He looked at me like he wasn't sure he should answer. "The Clarke house burned down in 1974. Everyone inside died. Margaret, Rebecca, and their little girl." I felt my heart stop. "That's not true. I live there." His face went pale. You, what did you say? Before I could speak again, the church bell above us groaned. One long, broken note that rattled the glass in the windows. The priest crossed himself. That bell hasn't rung in 40 years. The air shifted. Cold swept through the graveyard, thick with the scent of lilies. My grandmother's perfume. I turned back toward the church. For a moment, I saw something in the reflection of the stained glass window. The house, burning, and inside the flames 3 figures. A woman, another woman, and a little girl holding a doll. The priest grabbed my arm. "Miss Clarke," he whispered, voice trembling. "Whatever you think you are, don't go back there." I pulled away, unable to breathe, unable to think. But when I looked down, I saw a fresh patch of soil at my feet, dark, soft, newly turned. A wooden cross lay upon it. Carved into the wood, half faded by time, was my name, Evelyn Clarke. The date beneath it read 1974. Episode 18, The Truth Inside the Walls. Truth doesn't always scream. Sometimes it just waits, quiet, patient, hungry. After the graveyard, I walked home, or what I thought was home. The air felt wrong, stretched thin, like the world itself didn't want to hold me anymore. Every step closer to the house made the sky darker, redder, heavier. When I reached it, the front door was already open. The house breathed in, and I stepped inside. Everything was exactly as I'd left it, and yet not. The furniture was older. The wallpaper had peeled entirely, revealing the carved names beneath. Margaret, Rebecca, Evelyn. But there were more now. Hundreds more. Names I didn't recognize. Names that moved when I looked at them. The air vibrated with whispers. "Welcome home, Evelyn." Only one voice wasn't whispering. It was humming. The lullaby, the one my grandmother used to sing, came from the walls. I followed it to the parlor. The air shimmered, heavy with the scent of lilies and smoke. On the table lay the broken cassette player, its reels still turning though there was no tape inside. A voice drifted out of it anyway, soft, calm, resigned. My grandmother's. "You were never meant to remember," she said. "But the house always remembers." The floor beneath my feet began to pulse, steady as a heartbeat. Dust fell from the ceiling like ash. The wallpaper shifted, forming images, scenes. The fire, the child, the 3 of them trapped inside. I saw my grandmother pounding at the walls, screaming for someone, me, to open the door. And in that instant I understood. She hadn't built the house to keep something out. She'd built it to keep something in. Me. The whispers grew louder. "You burned us, Evelyn. You promised you'd stay. You were supposed to be the foundation." I stumbled backward, shaking my head. No, that's not true. But the voices were rising now. Dozens, hundreds, filling every corner of the room. The floorboards swelled, bulging upward, cracking open as dark liquid seeped between the seams. From beneath it, pale hands began to emerge, charred, twisted, reaching, each one with a name carved into its wrist. Margaret, Rebecca, Evelyn. One of them touched my ankle, cold, familiar. I looked down and saw my grandmother's face half submerged in the wood, her eyes wide and glistening. "Finish what you started," she whispered. "Confess." The walls groaned. Blood dripped from the ceiling. The room tilted. I fell to my knees, clutching my head. "I didn't do this. I'm not." But then I saw her, the child from the crawlspace, standing in the doorway, holding a doll made of ash and hair. "You set the fire," she said. Her voice was gentle, accusing. "You didn't want to be forgotten. You wanted to stay." "No," I whispered, trembling. "I was just a child." Her smile was soft. "You still are." The walls burst open, spilling black smoke that twisted into faces. Hundreds of them, each one mine. The child stepped closer. "The truth isn't inside the walls, Evelyn. You are." The house convulsed. The floor split wide, swallowing the room in red light. I screamed as the world inverted. Ceiling becoming floor, whispers becoming roars. and then silence. When I opened my eyes, I was standing in the doorway again. Morning light filtered through cracked glass. But the house was gone. Only a foundation remained. And carved into the stone, fresh and glistening, 3 words waited for me. You came home. Episode 19. The final tape. The sound came first. Faint click. A real turning. The whisper of tape dragging against metal teeth. I thought the player had burned with the house. But when I woke on the blackened foundation, it sat beside me. Untouched, clean, waiting. A single cassette inside. Labeled in red ink, final tape for her. For a long time, I just stared at it. The morning air was too still, too heavy. There was no birdsong, no wind, only the soft hiss of static coming from nowhere. Finally, I pressed play. First, nothing. Then my own voice, soft, trembling, but unmistakably mine. Evelyn Clarke. Recording number 13. If anyone finds this, you should have left me buried. I froze. My voice continued. I don't remember when I made this. Maybe I didn't. Maybe the house made it for me. But if you're hearing it, it means I've remembered everything. The ground beneath me shuddered. The charred beams creaked, as though the ruins themselves were listening. I wasn't trapped in the house, the voice said. I was the house. Every wall, every whisper, every scream. It was all me. I built it to hold the fire. To hold them, but it grew hungry. I closed my eyes. I could still smell the lilies, still feel the cold hands in the floorboards. They told me the house burned down. The recording went on. But houses like that don't burn. They only change shape. They find new foundations, new walls, new hearts. A pause. Then, faintly, a second voice. My grandmother's, layered beneath mine like an echo trapped under glass. She knows now, it whispered. She knows what she is. I felt something move behind me, a breeze cold and slow. When I turned, the remains of the house were rising. Timbers twisting, black smoke knitting beams together. The tape hissed louder. You thought you could leave, my recorded voice said. You thought fire could erase memory. But memory doesn't die. It rebuilds. You lit the match, Evelyn. You started it. To be remembered. To live forever in the walls. I stumbled backward. The ruins towered now, reshaping themselves into a structure both familiar and wrong. My childhood home, perfect again, only smaller, like it had grown from my own shadow. From inside the doorway came that lullaby again. The one my grandmother used to hum. I raised the tape player. What do you want from me? Static swallowed the words. Then through it, to finish what you began. The ground trembled. Cracks spread outward from my feet. Beneath the soil, something red glowed faintly, pulsing like a buried heart. My voice on the tape dropped to a whisper. If you burn it again, you'll burn yourself. Because there's no line between you and it anymore. You built it from everything you tried to forget. I threw the recorder to the ground. It didn't break. Kept playing. Run, Evelyn, my grandmother's voice said. Before the walls, remember your footsteps. But there was nowhere left to run. The house was whole again now, breathing. Windows opening like eyes. Doorways stretching like mouths. From inside came a child's laughter. Then a voice that was both mine and not mine. You left me in the fire. The doorway filled with light, crimson, living, beating. A figure stepped out. The child. My reflection at 7 years old. Her skin glowed faintly in the red light, her eyes empty. Play it again, she said. You'll remember the rest. I picked up the recorder. My hand moved on its own. The button clicked. The reel spun backward. And before the tape ended, before the world went silent again, my voice spoke one last time. Calm, steady, certain. This isn't a recording. This is me still talking. Then the tape clicked, and the house, my house, took its first breath. Episode 20. The house that knew my name. There's a moment before dawn when the world forgets what it's supposed to be. When light hasn't yet decided whether to rise, and darkness hasn't agreed to leave. That's when I heard the house speak for the first time. Not the voices inside it. Not my grandmother. Not the echoes of my own breath. The house itself. It began with a sound like the shifting of stone, slow and deliberate, followed by a voice that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at all. Evelyn. It said my name the way someone might taste it, like a memory finally remembered. You built me, it said, and now you understand why. I stood in the ruins, the ashes still warm around my feet. The house was gone, yet I could feel it breathing beneath the ground, every heartbeat echoing through the earth. I didn't build you, I whispered. I was born here. The air trembled. The ash stirred. Exactly, it said. You were the first wall. I wanted to run, but there was nowhere to go. The world beyond the foundation was fading again, melting into fog. The horizon folded back into itself like paper burning in reverse. Why me? I asked. Why this? The house sighed. A deep, sorrowful sound like old timber cracking under weight. Because you wanted to stay, it said. You wanted to be remembered. And nothing that is remembered ever truly dies. The ground split. From beneath the soil, pieces of the house began to rise. Broken boards, shattered windows, rusted nails. They hovered in the air, forming the outline of a structure around me. And within that skeleton of smoke and splinters, shadows appeared. My grandmother, my mother, the child, all of them watching. You kept us here, the house said through them. You called to us every time you whispered your own name. Every Evelyn is a door, and doors must open. I fell to my knees. Then let me end it. Let me set you free. The shadows smiled, soft, almost kind. You can't free what you are. The boards sealed above me. The house was whole again, rebuilt not from wood or stone, but from breath, bone, and memory. My memory. The walls whispered. The same lullaby, the one that had followed me since the beginning. I looked around. Every surface pulsed faintly, alive. Faces formed in the wallpaper, hands pressed through the floorboards, reaching not to hurt, but to hold. You are home, the house whispered. I pressed my palm against the wall. It was warm, and for the first time I didn't pull away. Images flooded my mind. Flashes of my mother's hands painting over the names, my grandmother sealing the cellar door, the child's laughter turning to screams. They hadn't trapped something inside. They'd trapped me from coming back. The house shuddered. The foundation groaned. The voice grew quieter now, almost gentle. Every story ends where it began, Evelyn. And you began with me. The walls began to fade, turning translucent, revealing the void beyond. An endless expanse of white, pulsing softly like the inside of a living heart. My reflection appeared in front of me, smiling. She looked peaceful. Oh, what are you? I asked. She reached out, touching my hand through the air. The last memory the house needed. I felt the floor dissolve beneath my feet. The fog rose, wrapping around me like silk. And then I heard a familiar sound. A knock. 3 times. From somewhere far away, a voice, fragile, trembling, called out. Hello? Is someone there? I just inherited this house. I smiled. The walls around me pulsed once, twice, then stilled. The whisper came one last time, faint but certain, drifting through the dust. Every house needs a name, and every name needs a voice. Then silence, and the story began again.
Epilogue, the memory that stayed. They found the house again years later, or what was left of it, a team of developers, eager to build something new where something old had finally surrendered. The land was dry, the earth charred black in strange shapes, as if roots had burned upward instead of down. When they dug the first foundation trench, one of the men found a box. Small, wooden, sealed tight with rusted nails. Inside, an old cassette player, melted at the edges, but somehow intact. And a single tape. No one knew why, but they played it anyway. The tape hissed softly for a moment, and then a woman's voice spoke. Calm, sad. My name is Evelyn Clarke. The sound of breathing filled the silence. I built a house that remembered everything. Every laugh, every lie, every prayer whispered when no one was listening. It loved me so much it refused to let me go. Static crackled. Then, if you hear this, you've already stepped inside. They say the foreman stopped the tape right there. But not before one worker whispered that he'd heard something faint underneath the static, a heartbeat. No one returned after that. The project was abandoned, and yet travelers who pass that stretch of road at night swear they still see it. A house standing where the field should be, glowing faintly under a colorless sky. Sometimes the front door is open. Sometimes a light flickers in the attic window. And if you get close enough to hear the wind through the broken beams, you might hear a woman's voice whispering softly, like she's talking to the walls. Do you remember me? They say the house always answers, not with words, but with a sound, a low, aching sigh, like the exhale of something that never learned how to die. Inside, the wallpaper still moves. The floor still beats. The air still smells of lilies and smoke. And somewhere deep beneath the foundation, if you listen long enough, you might hear the faint click of an old cassette restarting. Over and over. Play. Stop. Rewind. Evelyn's voice forever caught between confession and prayer. Every name leaves an echo. Every home keeps a piece of its maker. And I was both. The recording ends with a whisper, barely audible, half buried in static. Welcome home.